I want to share with you an incredible story. I shared this in my morning class, so if you're in the morning class already, you'll enjoy the story a second time like I am going to enjoy sharing the story with you. It's just an unbelievable story, and it's connected to the theme that I want to discuss, which is how our past affects our present and future. A lot of people, they look at their past, and because of the way they were in the past, they feel that's how the future is going to be. Some people, they have such an incredible youth, and they know for sure they'll be successful. Some people have a pretty challenging youth, and because of that, they feel, I'm doomed. So they just concluded in Israel, at a conference of Chabad rabbis in Israel, and actually today, they started the conference of Chabad women in New York. So there was a rabbi there from Chadera. He said a story about himself. He said he was 10 years old, and his family, his parents were separated. He had to go to the synagogue very often by himself. It wasn't a big deal for him to go to synagogue by himself, but what happened was that it came Yom Kippur, and night of Yom Kippur, he sees how the whole synagogue is full of people, and he's wondering how he's going to get a seat the next day. So he has an idea. I'll wake up early, and I'll find a seat. I'll come really early. He comes really early, and he notices when he comes in the synagogue, it's pretty empty. It's about less than a minyan, but less than 10 people there. People are saying Tehillim. It's fairly early, and he's 10 years old, looking around, trying to find the seat. Oh, there's plenty of seats, but he sees every seat has a name on it. Everyone, all the seats were sold. So he's looking. Where could he sit? So he's looking around the whole synagogue. Every seat has a name on it. And then he sees in the back there are a couple of plastic chairs, a broken table. And there's no name on it. Fantastic. He takes a siddur, and he starts to pray, say Tehillim. He's very happy. He's saying Tehillim, he's praying, he's joining the minyan, he's doing his thing. And as the prayers continue, the synagogue fills up, and he feels a tap on the shoulder. Tap on the shoulder. He turns around. Boy, you're in my seat. So he's like, what do you mean your seat? I'm here since 7 o'clock in the morning. How does this become your seat? Doesn't have your name on it. Why is this your seat? He's, boy, get out of my seat. And while he's thinking about what to do, the guy starts to scream, get out now, kid. So he gets out of the seat. He's very insulted. And he starts walking around in and out of the synagogue. But most of all, he turns to God. And he says, God, you don't have a chair for a little boy in your synagogue? You don't have a chair for a little boy? Like, how could there be that there's a neshama, there's a soul that wants to pray to you, and you don't even have a place for him? How could that be? That's where he was. That year, his mother. This was 1991, Yom Kippur, 1991, Tafshin Aleph. That year, his mother was going through a lot of difficult challenges, and someone had told her a good thing to do would be to write a letter to the Rebbe. She wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe responded, she should check her mezuzot. So he took the mezuzot down, and right away the first thing he noticed was, on one of the mezuzot, instead of it saying Shin Dalet Yud, which means the name of God, it said Shin Dalet, which is the name of the opposite of the name of a God. It's the name of the opposite of a blessing. So they checked the mezuzot, and they fixed the mezuzot, and lo and behold, Baruch Hashem, all of a sudden doors started opening. In all the areas that they asked the Rebbe for a blessing for, all of a sudden things started to happen. They were so happy. And her siblings, the mother's siblings, said, you got to go to the Rebbe. Got to go to the Rebbe and just be there. So she went on Rosh Chodesh Kislev in Tafshin Aleph, 1991. She went, actually the time they had the conference of the Chabad rabbis in Kislev, that's when she went. She comes to the Rebbe, there's a video, I saw the video. She comes to the Rebbe. If you're familiar with the Rebbe's talks, you'll understand how unusual this is. If you're not going to get it, but I'll try to convey it to you. You have about a quarter of a second with the Rebbe when you pass by, and the Rebbe gives out the dollars. Bracha v'atzlacha. If you stand there, you have a few more seconds. And you try to, maybe a few more seconds, maybe 3 seconds. She comes by the Rebbe. She asks for a bracha for her children. The Rebbe gives her a bracha, and then Rebbe calls her back and says, and this is for your son. She comes back to Israel, and she tells her son, the Rebbe is thinking about you. The Rebbe is thinking about you. And he realized that even though there's no place for him in the synagogue next to his house, but in the heart of our great Rebbe, there's a place for him too. The Rebbe thinks about him. There's a place for him in the Rebbe's heart. That's what he felt. And he was sharing at this conference. He was sharing like that's what the role really is of the Rebbe sending emissaries throughout the world. It's that every Jew should have a place. There shouldn't be a Jew. There shouldn't be someone who feels like there's no place for them. Just like the Rebbe has room for all the Jewish people in his heart. So that's what we're meant to do. Us who have merited to have some kind of connection to the Rebbe, to share that with other Jews, an open door for them. So, on that note, I want to share with you the most fascinating story and meaning, not story, Torah, that I always heard about before. I never heard any satisfying explanation for it, and always was wondering about it. And hopefully this will leave us with more answers than questions, but I'm sure there'll be questions that won't be answered today. Who was Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson? Who was Moses' grandson? You would think Moses' grandson...
That was his grandson.
Oh, you'd be a Levite, and you got an Aliyah, the second Aliyah, not the third. But who is Moses? You would think it would be a great thing to be Moses' grandson, right? Moses being his grandson would be an amazing thing. But the Talmud says that Moses had two children, Gershom and Eliezer, and Gershom had a son named Yehonatan. Who was this Yehonatan? So it says that... you know about him, right? Yehonatan, he went to live in one of the cities of the Levim, that's in the Tanakh, and he got a job. So, someone offered, he was trying to find a livelihood, trying to find work, and no one was working in masks or anything in those days. So he found a job in Pesel Micha. He found a job working in a church. And he was a priest. He found the job as a priest. And the question is, how did Moses' grandson become a priest? What was going on in his head? What was he thinking? So, some commentaries say he didn't mean it. He didn't want to do it. He just did this for the sake of earning a living. In fact, the Torah says that he lived a long life. And the reason he lived such a long life was because of what he did as a priest. He was one of those Jewish kind of priests. You know, like... You guys, people would all come to the idol and say, hey, I want to make a sacrifice to appease the idol. I want to calm the idol's wrath down. Really? What do you want to do? I want the idol to really calm down. Okay, I have an idea for you. Make 10 eggs, sunny side up, and flour, and I'll take care of it. And he gives him the 10 eggs, and he eats the eggs, and he eats the flour. He's like, this is all baloney. This doesn't mean anything. And he convinced many people to stop serving idols. He actually was, of course it's forbidden. Of course it was wrong. But he didn't really mean it. And they asked him, what happened was there was another tribe, the tribe of Dan, and they came to this successful business, a successful church, and they said, great idea, let's bring this home. And they wanted to steal the idol. They went to steal the idol, and this guy, Yehonatan, he's like, you can't steal this idol, this is our idol from our church. Hey, how much are you getting paid? They don't even know how much you're getting paid. Listen, we're the tribe of Dan. We have a huge tribe. We want to bring this back home and make another church much bigger and much nicer for our whole tribe. How about we hire you as our priest? Why didn't you say so? So he joins the tribe of Dan, and he becomes the priest for the tribe of Dan when they were serving idols at the time of Islam. Somebody asked him, though, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you be a priest for idols? So Yehonatan said, I have a tradition from my father's father. All the great intentions he had, and whatever with all the explanation that he helped other people go away from idol worship, it's still forbidden. How do you do it? So he said, I have a tradition from my father's father. Who's his father's father? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. And my father said, it's better to do avodah zarah, it's better to do idol worship, than to ask people for help. Better to be an idol worshiper than to ask people for help. Josh, don't get the wrong idea. Listen to the end of the class. 1 second. What does that mean, though? How could that be? How can Moshe Rabbeinu say that? So a lot of people, they hear what they want to hear. What Moshe Rabbeinu meant when he said that was, Avodah shezara lo. As the commentaries explain, Moshe meant that he should do something which is strange for him. It means, you might say, this job is not befitting me. I don't want to be a secretary. I want to be the owner. And in language of Rabbi Jackie Mason, he's a janitor, but he owns the building, right? That's I don't want to be a janitor. So the Moshe Rabbeinu said it's better to take a job that is unbefitting, that's disgraceful. At least don't ask people for help. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu said, and he heard this the wrong way, and he took it literally. I'm going to be an idol worshiper. It wasn't what Moshe meant, but that's what he did. That's what he said. But the story gets deeper. Well, this week we're reading Parshat Yitro. Yitro was Moshe's father-in-law. This story of Menashe, of Yehonatan, has a backstory. Torah says that when Moshe Rabbeinu came to the well and he met Yisro's daughters, all of the other shepherds tried chasing them away, and Moshe protected them. And Moshe comes back to Yitro, and he tells Yitro he wants to marry Yitro's daughter, Tzipora. And Yitro says, you can marry my daughter on one condition. What's the condition? You know the condition. You heard this before, I'm sure. Yeah? What's the condition? The condition is that your first son has to be an idol worshiper. And Moshe agrees. The first son will be an idol worshiper, and then the rest is L'Shem Shamayim. And he swore to Yitro to do that. That's what it says in the Talmud. I'm not making this up. It's in the script. It says so in the Mechilta. He swore to Yitro that his first son will be an idol worshiper. What does that even mean? How did Moshe Rabbeinu agree to such a thing? Why? And also, before we get to Moshe Rabbeinu, how about Yitro himself? Why were Yitro's daughters his shepherds? What happened was like this. Yitro, he served every idol in the world, and as the Torah says, he realized that all these idols were fake. And that's why the Torah says, the Zohar says, the Torah could not have been given until Yitro came to join the Jewish people. Why Yitro? Because Yitro, after trying out all the idols in the world and realizing all of them they're all meaningless, his acknowledgement of the truth of Hashem was so meaningful because he tried every idol in the world. What happened when Yitro came back to Midian after trying all the idols in the world and realizing that they're all meaningless? Before he came to join the Jewish people, get the Torah, when he came, you know what he did? They're all looking up at him. He's the top priest. He's like, guys, I'm old. I can't continue this. They say words that come from the heart enter the heart. When he said, I'm old, what do you really mean? This is all really a waste of time. I'm too old for this. I'm too old to do all these things. And they heard the message. They realized he doesn't believe in this stuff anymore. So what they say to him after he says, I'm too old for this? They said, you're disgracing our religion? You're disgracing all of our beliefs? That's what you're doing? They ostracized him. They made a chayr in him. They said that none of our boys will marry your daughters. None of us will ever work for you. You are going to no one's going to ever talk to you ever again. And that's why Yitro had no choice but to hire his daughters as his shepherds. Because of the chayrim, because of the ban all the people in the town made against Yitro and his daughters. So Yitro knew how bad it was to serve idols. Yitro knew how terrible it was. Yitro sacrificed his life before being Moshe's father-in-law. He knew this was all baloney. So why would he, in the world, would he tell Moshe Rabbeinu to promise him that his first son should be an idol worshiper? What did that even mean? So one explanation is like this. Again, look at the words avodah zarah. Avodah zarah doesn't just mean idol worship, but also mean do something which is strange for you. Yitro had a great advantage that he gave the world because of his experience. Because of where Yitro was coming from, because of who he was, he had a different kind of passion in his Judaism, in his belief in God. When someone's brought up with Judaism, brought up with Torah, brought up with mitzvot, they don't really appreciate what they have. They say, at what point does a person stop being about teshuvah? A person decides to keep Judaism. At what point they stop from being about teshuvah to being a regular? When you become a regular? Become a regular when you start talking in the middle of davening. Because when you're about teshuvah, you feel it's a new world. They say a place about teshuvah a tzaddik cannot reach. Why? Because about teshuvah he feels the fire of his prayers, feels the fire of mitzvot, the fire of his Torah. So Yitro said, I don't want my kids, my grandchildren to grow up and they're just going to be like everybody else, just do the things regular, just do things in a frigid way. I want it to be fire. So I want it to come to be, not to serve idols, but they should grow up in Midian. They should speak the language of Midian. They should wear the clothing of Midian. They should learn all the different customs of Midian, and then they should be exposed to the truth of Torah. They should first try everything else first, and they realize how fake that is, and then they'll get to be like me. But it was a mistake. And Moshe Rabbeinu identified with this. Moshe Rabbeinu had a similar experience. Moshe Rabbeinu was raised in the house of the Pharaoh. And he was educated by the Pharaoh, and educated by the people of the Pharaoh, educated in the depraved culture of Egypt. So he's very familiar with the advantage of coming from the darkness and discovering the light. And therefore, what Yitro said resonated. However, it was forbidden what he said. Why is it forbidden? We say every day in our prayers, we start every morning by saying to God, God, please don't bring me to a place of a challenge. Please don't challenge me. You're not allowed to bring yourself to a place of a challenge. You're not allowed, no matter what your intentions are, You're not allowed to say to God, I want to be challenged. In fact, you have to do whatever you can so that you shouldn't go to a place of a challenge. Exactly. So Moshe said, I don't agree with you about being brought up in the culture of Midian. I don't agree with you. Like, imagine, a lot of parents, they make this big mistake. They tell their kids, be careful to brush your teeth, and they make sure they brush their teeth. On the other hand, we talk about more important things like what they believe in and what, figure it out by yourself. It's like inviting to your house someone that with tattoos and full and on drugs. I think, please hang out and be my babysitter for my kids. It's no one will do that. A lot of parents, I want my kids to find their own way. You want them to find their own way? Even their dental hygiene, you want to teach them. So how much more so their spirituality and the things they believe in, how much more so do you want to have a say in and guide them? So this is what Moshe agreed to do. When Moshe said, I swear that my son will be an idol worshiper, doesn't mean literally an idol worshiper. It means avodah shazara lo, he should be involved in things which are strange, which means that being a Jew is different than other religions. Other religions talk about divorcing yourself from the world, being involved in the spiritual setting, separating yourself. A Jew meant to be involved in the physical. A Jew is meant to be involved and to have a business and to involve in the physical and to work. And yet, being involved in the physical and learn, still not to take interest, as the Torah says, and to be honest, and to say a bracha before you eat. The Torah doesn't say that you have to be separate and not to get married. The Torah says marriage is a holy thing. The Torah says work is a holy thing. The Torah says that eating is a holy thing. A table is called an altar. So when Moshe Rabbeinu agrees to the idol worship, he doesn't agree to idol worship. He agrees again to avodah shazara lo, to do something that seems that's strange to God. It's not holy. Yes, Moshe agrees. Moshe swears, I agree to that. That's the way it's meant to be. So what happened to Yehonatan? So Yehonatan, it says in the Torah, Yehonatan was called the son of Menashe. Why Menashe? So the son of Gershom, the son of Menashe. What Menashe? So you look in the Tanakh, the letter of Nun in the word Menashe is above the line. It's not in the regular place. So it could be read as, Yorah Shalom Aleichem, Yorah ben Avraham David, Yorah David ben Avraham. If you look at, we're talking about the subject, that interest Yorah, amazing, you're here. This is your subject. It says that Yehonatan was the son of... It says that Yehonatan was the son of Menashe. Who is this Menashe? He's not the son of, he's son of grandson of Moshe. So you look more carefully, the Nun is above the line, which means, the Talmud explains, Yehonatan had a choice. Either it could be a son of Menashe, or it could be a son of Moshe. Who is Menashe? Menashe is a famous king that was an idol worshiper. But among all the idol worshipping kings, and unfortunately we had many kings who were idol worshippers, Menashe was unique in the fact that his father was a tzaddik. His father was a very righteous person, and yet he was a idol worshiper. So he could either be a son of Moshe or a son of Menashe. And he chose to be a son of Menashe. What happened to this Yehonatan? So Arizal says amazing. Arizal says, we have Rashim Bar Yochai, and a son, getting you dizzy, right? Rashim Bar Yochai and his son Eliezer. They were a Gilgul. Rashim Bar Yochai was a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Yehonatan was a Gilgul of Eliezer was Gilgul of Yehonatan. That means Rashim Bar Yochai's son. So although it wasn't Moshe's fault that Yehonatan went off, but Moshe and Rabbeinu had a way he had to do with Yehonatan's mistake. Because what did Moshe Rabbeinu say? He said, it's better to be avodah zarah. He didn't mean literally like Yehonatan took it the wrong way, but he still said something that made him go off the wrong way. It still had something to do. It still confused him, and therefore Hashem arranged that Moshe Rabbeinu should have a tikkun, and Yehonatan should have a tikkun. And Moshe Rabbeinu became a Gilgul in Rashim Bar Yochai, and Yehonatan became a Gilgul in the son of Rashim Bar Yochai, and then he taught him Torah again, and was able to give a tikkun to Yehonatan. It gets even deeper. But I don't know how much time we have left. How much time we have left, Yosef?
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Which Gilgul I'm talking about?
It says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu was praying for us after the sin of the golden calf, it says, Vayechal Moshe. At Moshe Rabbeinu prayed. Word by Yechal, Arizal says, the Gemara says he was burning fire in his bones. Fire was burning in his bones. Why was there fire burning in his bones? What does it even mean? So it says the word bones doesn't just mean bones. Bones means the essence. Bones means the very core. When Rabbi Kiva, before Rabbi Kiva became a religious person, he hated Torah scholars. He says, give me a Torah scholar and I'll bite him like a donkey. And the Talmud asks, why like a donkey? Why not like a dog? He says, because dogs bite the flesh. Donkeys bite the bones. So Rabbi Kiva said, he hated Chachamim in his bones. In a similar way, who was this Menashe? Moshe Rabbeinu, this Yehonatan. Moshe Rabbeinu, he said to God, why have you done evil to your people? Why have you done so bad to your people? It's a word we shouldn't say. The word bad, not to say the word bad. The Chafetz Chaim says you can say the word bitter, you can't say the word bad. Whatever God does is good. You can't say that God does bad, you could say it's bitter. The Jewish people at that time, babies were dying in two ways. One way babies were dying when they were thrown in the Nile River. Another way they were dying was they were put in the walls. So it says, and the Arizal says, the reason they were dying these two ways was because of the souls. At that time, God was actually trying to help them. They were all Gilgulim, they were all reincarnations. The generation of the flood was reincarnated in the souls that were drowned. And the generation of those who built the Tower of Babel to rebel against God, they were reincarnated in the souls that were built on the wall. So this Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, why do evil to your people? And he saw a baby in the wall, and he wanted to rescue the baby. Make a long story short, that baby that Moshe rescued was Micha. Who was Micha? When the Jewish people left Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu went to bring Yosef, the bones of Yosef, with them. How was he going to find the bones of Yosef? The bones of Yosef were buried in the Nile River. The Egyptians put Yosef in the Nile River to bring a blessing to the Nile River. They hoped that his presence in the Nile River would somehow make things better for the Nile River. So how is he going to get the bones of Yosef out of the Nile River? So Moshe Rabbeinu wrote on a metal plate, Alei Shor, let the ox rise. One of the euphemisms that's used about Yosef is called an ox. So he put the plate on the Nile River, and the bones of Yosef arose. Who was watching all this? This boy Micha, the one that Moshe rescued. So Moshe rescues this boy. He sees Moshe take the bones of Yosef miraculously, and what does he do? Moshe leaves with the bones of Yosef, and the Jewish people take Yosef to Israel. He takes the plate, and then when the confusion happened, when the Jewish people came to the sin of the golden calf, they threw the gold in the fire. A calf came out of the fire. How did a calf come out of the fire? This Micha, he came with this plate and he threw the plate into the fire so that the ox would come out. So when Moshe prayed, you imagine how that hurt Moshe. Here he rescued this child, and this child does exactly the opposite. But despite all that, despite all the tremendous pain that Moshe Rabbeinu had, we see from the story, the end of the story is good. The end of the story is that this Yehonatan eventually he lived a long life. He lived all the way to the time of David HaMelech. And what did David HaMelech do? Just conclude with this, let Eitan go. The conclusion is, David HaMelech hired Yehonatan to be Sar HaOtzar. He hired him to be his treasurer. David saw this guy loves money. He likes money. So he got him by the thing that he cared about. He said, let me give this guy a good job. He gave him a good job, and he became wealthy as an employee of King David, and he did teshuvah, and he returned to God. So the story teaches us, the story of Moshe and his grandson teaches us a couple of things. Number one is that God never lets you go. Even if you go in the wrong direction, God always gives you a chance to make a tikkun. Number two, you shouldn't trust yourself that you're not going to make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Don't put yourself in a state of a challenge, no matter what it is. Never bring yourself to a place, I can handle it. Don't bring yourself to a place of a challenge. And the bottom line is, number one thing is, we all have a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu in us. We all have a spark in us that is pure and holy, and eventually it comes out. Like a friend of mine once asked his rabbi, he says, Rabbi, what's the best way to run away from God? Rabbi says, the best way to run away from God is run to God. Because you run away, you're eventually it's a boomerang, you're eventually going to come back. So it's much easier to go straight. Much easier. And Hashem should help us all realize who we are and what we are, have a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu in us, and we should have to see Mashiach Tzedekenu Kor of Mamish.